My husband let his mother fire me from my own company. At the board meeting, I revealed the 51% I'd hidden in a trust. The boardroom was silent except for the sound of papers sliding across mahogany. Marcus sat frozen at the head of the table, where he'd sat for 12 years. His mother's hand trembled on her cane. I watched them read the trust documents, and for the first time in a decade, I spoke with authority. The morning started like most Tuesday mornings at Tech Connect's downtown office. The building overlooked the city, glass and steel catching the morning light. Inside conference room 4B, 6 board members sat around the table that had witnessed 12 years of company decisions. Marcus occupied the head seat, as he always had. His mother, Gloria, sat in the corner, unofficial but ever present. Simone, the woman he'd promoted to president 3 months ago, took notes on her tablet. I was not supposed to be there. 3 months earlier, this same board had voted to eliminate my position. Chief Operating Officer, they'd called it. I'd called it the job I'd been doing since before we had an office, before we had employees, before we had anything but an idea in my laptop. But on this Tuesday morning, I walked in last. My lawyer, David Jameson, held the door. The room went quiet. Marcus looked up from his agenda. "Victoria, I'm not sure why you're here. We discussed the severance terms. Everything was settled." I set my briefcase on the table, opened it, removed a folder that had waited 12 years to see sunlight. "I called this meeting," I said, "as majority shareholder of Tress Connect." The words hung there. Marcus blinked. Simone stopped typing. Gloria's cane tapped once against the floor. "What are you talking about?" Marcus said. His voice had lost its usual confidence. David Jameson stepped forward. He'd known me since we were 8 years old, singing in the children's choir at First Baptist. Now he was the best corporate attorney in the city. He placed identical folders in front of each board member. "Inside you'll find the original incorporation documents from Tress Connect LLC," David said. His voice carried the same calm authority I'd learned to adopt. "Filed 12 years ago with the Secretary of State, signed by both Marcus and Victoria Williams." I watched Marcus open his folder, watched his eyes scan the pages, watched him find the ownership structure, right there on page 3. Victoria Williams, 51%. Marcus Williams, 49%. His signature sat at the bottom. Clear as the day he'd signed it. Too excited about launching the company to read the details. "This isn't right," he said, but his voice said he knew it was. "The company attorney can verify," I said. I looked at Harold Stevens, who'd been our legal counsel for 8 years. "The documents are authentic, correct?" Harold was already nodding. "I've reviewed them. They're legitimate, filed with the state, never amended." Gloria stood up, cane shaking. "This is absurd. My son built this company." "Your son signed these papers," I interrupted. Not loud, not angry, just factual. "At incorporation. The ownership structure has been valid for 12 years. I let that settle. Let them read. Let them process. Marcus kept staring at the signature. His signature. He couldn't deny it. The story of how we got here started 15 years ago, though none of them knew it. Started at Howard University, where I met Marcus Williams in our junior year business class. He sat 2 rows ahead, always raising his hand, always ready with an answer. I sat in back, taking notes, watching how people reacted to confidence. We were both from church families, mine from Memphis, his from D.C. Both Baptist, both raised with the same hymns and the same Sunday expectations. When he asked me to coffee after a group project, I said yes. Marcus was everything people noticed first. 6'2", smile that made you trust him, voice that commanded attention. His mama Gloria had raised him to believe he was destined for greatness. She told him that every Sunday over pot roast. Me, I was quieter, strategic. My daddy Thomas used to say, "Baby girl, silence is strategy. Let folks talk themselves into whatever they need to believe. You just keep building." I kept building. Marcus and I dated through senior year, met each other's families over spring break. My parents, Thomas and Ruth, welcomed him into our Memphis home with the warmth they showed everyone. Mama made her famous peach cobbler. Daddy took him to the church men's breakfast, where Elder Jameson and Deacon Thompson asked the questions fathers ask. Gloria's reception was different. When I met her at their D.C. home, she looked me over like merchandise. "That's a nice dress," she said. Then after a pause, "For a young lady." Marcus didn't catch the tone, or he pretended not to. "Your hair," Gloria continued, reaching toward my natural curls without asking permission. "Have you thought about straightening it? For professional settings?" I stepped back politely. "My hair is professional as it is, Mrs. Williams." "Of course," Gloria said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just trying to help." That should have been my warning. But I was young and in love and believed that good intentions could overcome bad first impressions. We married 2 years after graduation. Small ceremony at my home church in Memphis. Mama Ruth coordinated everything. Sister Margaret played piano. The youth choir sang. My daddy walked me down the aisle wearing the same suit he'd been married in 40 years earlier. Gloria sat in the front row, wearing black and white. Not quite funeral colors, but close enough. When the pastor asked if anyone objected, I swear I saw her mouth twitch, but she stayed silent. For the first 2 years, we were happy. Marcus worked at a consulting firm downtown. I managed operations for a small nonprofit that provided job training for formerly incarcerated folks. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood and saved money and talked about the future, over cheap wine on Friday nights. The business idea came from me during one of those Friday nights. I'd watched my mama and her sister struggle to find quality hair care products for years. Watched them drive across town to the one store that carried what they needed. Watched stylists at our church complain about suppliers who didn't understand black hair, who didn't stock the right products, who treated them like they were asking for specialty items when they were asking for basics. What if there was a platform, I told Marcus one night, that connected black hair stylists directly with suppliers? Technology-based, make it easy for stylists to find products, for suppliers to reach their market. Cut out the middlemen who don't understand our needs. Marcus's eyes lit up the way they did when he saw an opportunity. "That's brilliant," he said. "We could build that. I could build that." The shift from we to I happened in one sentence. I noticed, said nothing, let him feel the excitement. But I made a note in the journal I kept on my nightstand. Marcus, excited about my idea, already making it his story. We incorporated 6 months later. Tress Connect, LLC. Marcus handled the networking, the vision presentations, the excitement. I handled the legal paperwork, the technology development, the actual building. I used my daddy's lawyer for the incorporation, David Jameson, Elder Jameson's son, who'd gone to law school at Georgetown and come back home to serve the community instead of chasing corporate money. He met me at his office on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus couldn't make it. He had a crucial meeting with a potential investor who turned out to be his friend from college who had no money to invest. "You want to talk structure," David said. It wasn't a question. He'd known me since we were kids, knew how my mind worked. "I want to be protected," I said. "Marcus is amazing at selling the vision, but I'm the one who'll build it. I want that reflected in the ownership structure." David nodded. "Smart. I'm assuming you don't want this to be obvious." "I don't want to emasculate him," I said, "but I also don't want to wake up one day and realize I built something I don't control." David drafted the documents carefully. 51% in my name, held in trust structure that protected my ownership while keeping it quiet in day-to-day operations. 49% for Marcus. The trust meant my ownership wasn't immediately obvious, unless someone read the fine print. It also meant my shares couldn't be touched in a divorce or business dispute without my explicit consent. "Your daddy taught you well," David said when I reviewed the documents. "This structure is solid, legal, airtight. As long as Marcus signs, you're protected." "Will he read it?" David asked. "No," I said. "He'll be too excited about the logo we just designed." I was right. When Marcus came to David's office 2 days later to sign the incorporation papers, he barely glanced at them. He was too busy talking about the pitch meeting he had scheduled with potential investors, about the branding strategy he'd developed, about his vision for making Tress Connect a household name. His signature, right there on page 3, binding him to an agreement he'd never fully read, giving me majority control of the company we were about to build. "Congratulations," David said when we finished. "You're officially business partners." "We're going to change everything," Marcus said, shaking David's hand enthusiastically. I caught David's eye. He gave me the slightest nod. Protection established. The church community believed in us from the start. That's how Black communities work when you do it right. You have an idea, you have integrity, people invest. Not because they expect huge returns, but because they believe in lifting each other up. Elder Thompson provided free office space in his commercial building on the east side. Just 2 rooms and a bathroom, but it was ours. Deacon Washington invested $5,000 from his retirement account. Sister Margaret did our bookkeeping for the first year, refusing payment, saying young people need help getting started. 3 other families from church invested smaller amounts, 1,000 here, 2,000 there. They all read the documents before they signed their checks. They all knew I held 51%. They all looked at Marcus and smiled and said, "We're investing in your vision," while quietly understanding that I was the one who'd make it real. Tress Connect grew slowly at first. 20 stylists signed up in our first 6 months, local mostly, from churches and beauty supply stores where I'd built relationships. Then 40, then 80. Then word started spreading through the network of Black stylists who'd been looking for exactly this kind of platform. Revenue started flowing, small at first, a few $100s a month, then a few thousand, then enough that Marcus quit his consulting job to focus on Tress Connect full-time. I kept my nonprofit job for another year, building the platform at night and on weekends until we had enough revenue that I could join him full-time. We hired our first employee in year 2, Keisha Washington, Deacon Washington's niece, who had a degree in business administration and needed a job after graduating. She started as everything: customer service, sales support, operations help. Within 6 months, she was essential. By year 5, we had 20 employees, an actual office with cubicles and conference rooms, revenue approaching $1 million annually. Marcus became the public face of the company, and he loved it. Interviews with industry blogs where he told the story of my vision for connecting Black beauty professionals. Speaking at conferences about my journey as an entrepreneur. Networking events where he handed out cards identifying him as founder and CEO. I stayed in the background, managed operations, hired staff, built relationships with suppliers, maintained the technology platform that was the actual backbone of everything we did. Made sure the company ran, while Marcus made sure people knew about it. The press called him founder and CEO in their articles. I was mentioned, when I was mentioned at all, as Williams's wife who handles operations. I never corrected them. Let Marcus have his narrative. I knew what I'd built. Gloria started attending company events during year 5. She'd moved from D.C. to our city to be closer to family. Translation: to insert herself into Marcus's success story. Our first major milestone was when we hit $1 million in revenue. We threw a celebration at a rented event space. Employees, investors, clients, church family, everyone who'd believed in us from the start. Gloria gave a speech nobody asked her to give. Walked up to the microphone during the informal part of the evening, cane in hand for dramatic effect, even though she didn't really need it yet. "My son has always been special," she told the room. "Since he was a boy, I knew he'd build something great. I told him every day, 'You're destined for greatness, Marcus. Don't let anyone tell you different. This company is proof that hard work and vision pay off. Proof that when you believe in yourself, when you ignore the doubters, you can build an empire." She raised her glass. Everyone applauded politely. She didn't mention me except to say, "And of course, Marcus's lovely wife Victoria, who helps out." I stood in back with Keisha. She looked at me with eyebrows raised. "You're not going to say anything," she whispered. "Not tonight," I said. "When?" "When it matters," I replied. The incidents accumulated slowly after that. Small enough individually to seem like nothing. Together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Company barbecue, year 6. Gloria introduced me to a potential investor from her social circle as Marcus's little helper, who keeps things organized. Industry conference, year 7. A journalist interviewed Marcus for a feature article about black entrepreneurs. The article called him a self-made founder who'd built Tress Connect from the ground up. Marcus shared it on social media with the caption, "Grateful for this journey." Never corrected the narrative, never mentioned my role. I saw that post while I was in the office at 2 a.m., fixing a critical system bug that would have cost us thousands in lost transactions if not resolved before morning. Marcus was asleep at home. Staff meeting, year 8. Gloria, who had no official role in the company, attended a leadership meeting and contradicted my decision about supplier contracts. "That seems risky," she said when I explained our new vetting process. "Marcus, maybe you should reconsider. Bring in someone with more experience to advise." Marcus laughed it off. "Maz always got opinions." But he didn't back up my decision either. Just moved to the next agenda item while several staff members looked confused about whose authority mattered. Christmas party, year 9. Gloria cornered me by the dessert table while I was getting a slice of sweet potato pie. She was loud enough that nearby employees could hear clearly. "You know, Victoria, Marcus really needs a real COO at this point. Someone with actual corporate experience. No offense, but this company has gotten too big for—" She waved her hand vaguely at me. "For what you bring. Marcus needs serious help now." I set down the pie, looked at her directly. "Gloria, I appreciate your concern, but I've been running operations since before we had an office. I think I can handle it." "Well," Gloria sniffed, "we'll see how long that lasts." I excused myself, went to the bathroom, looked at my reflection in the mirror, took several deep breaths, remembered my daddy's voice from childhood. "Baby girl, silence is strategy. Don't react in the moment. Wait until you have all the power, then speak." Church service, year 10. After Marcus made a generous donation to the building fund, money from the company we'd built together, Gloria stood during testimony time. This was the tradition where congregation members shared blessings or requests for prayer. "I want to thank God," Gloria said, voice trembling with what sounded like emotion, but was really performance, "for raising a son who creates jobs and brings blessings to this community. My boy Marcus built something from nothing, and now he's giving back. That's what it means to be a man of God." Sister Margaret, who'd been our bookkeeper and knew the truth, caught my eye from across the sanctuary. She shook her head slightly, lips pressed tight. The elders knew. The people who'd invested in us from the beginning knew. They were waiting to see what I'd do. Marcus's response to all of this was consistent. Every time I tried to bring up Gloria's behavior, his mother's undermining, the way I was being erased from the narrative, he said the same things. "That's just how Mama is. Don't take it personally. She means well. Can you just keep the peace?" He never defended me publicly. Never corrected journalists or investors or his own mother. Always asked me to be the bigger person while he enjoyed the credit for my work. I was tired of being the bigger person, but I wasn't ready to act yet. Didn't have all the pieces in place. Year 11. Everything accelerated. Simone Johnson arrived as a strategic consultant. Marcus hired her without board approval, without discussing it with me first. I came into the office one Monday morning and she had the office next to his. The office that had been empty that I'd suggested we use for our new client services manager. Simone was younger than me. Maybe 30. Light-skinned with straight hair she wore long. MBA from Harvard. The kind of polished corporate polish that Gloria decided Marcus needed. "Finally," Gloria said loudly when she met Simone that first week. "Professional help. Someone who knows how real businesses run." I was standing right there. So was Keisha and 3 other staff members. Simone got invited to meetings I wasn't included in. Started using "we" when discussing company strategy. "We think the market is ready for expansion. We've identified 3 key growth opportunities." Never Marcus and Victoria. Just we, meaning her and Marcus. Late nights became common. I'd come into the office at 8 a.m. and see Simone's car still in the parking lot from the night before. Coffee cups for 2 on Marcus's desk. Takeout containers from restaurants we never went to anymore. Marcus would come home at 11, midnight smelling like expensive perfume that wasn't mine. "Strategy sessions," he'd say when I asked. "Simone's helping me develop the 5-year plan." "We already have a 5-year plan," I said. "The one I developed last quarter." "Well, we need to refine it," Marcus replied. "Simone brings a different perspective." I could have confronted him. Could have made a scene about the perfume, the late nights, the way Simone looked at him in meetings. But confrontation wasn't my style. And more importantly, I knew that playing the jealous wife would just make me look weak, emotional, everything Gloria had always implied I was. Instead, I went to my office late one night when the building was empty, opened the safe where I kept our original incorporation documents, pulled out the trust papers, read through the structure my daddy's lawyer had built 12 years ago. 51%. I owned 51%. I pulled out my phone, called David Jameson. "I need you to review something," I said, "and I need you to do it quietly." "When?" he asked. "Can you meet me at your office tomorrow morning, early, before work?" "I'll be there at 6 a.m., David said. He didn't ask why, didn't need to. He'd known me long enough to trust that if I was calling at 11 p.m., asking for a confidential early morning meeting, it was serious. The next morning, I showed him everything: the trust documents, the company bylaws, the shareholder agreements, the board composition rules. "I need to know my options," I said, "and I need to know them precisely." David spent 2 hours reviewing documents, making notes, checking references. Finally, he looked up. "Victoria, you own this company. Legally, absolutely, irrevocably. 51% means majority control, means you can call special board meetings, means you can vote out the current CEO, means you have final say on any major company decision. Even though I've never exercised those rights, even though the ownership structure has been valid since incorporation. Marcus signed it. The fact that you haven't used your authority doesn't mean you don't have it." "What about the board? Marcus has packed it with his people." David smiled. "Check your bylaws. Section 7.3. Majority shareholders have the right to appoint board members. You can replace them." I sat back, felt something like electricity running through my body. Power I'd had all along but never claimed. "What would you need me to do?" I asked. "If I wanted to make a move." "Give me a week to prepare," David said. "Then we'll call a special board meeting, and we'll show them who really owns Tress Connect." The organizational restructuring happened 2 weeks later. Gloria orchestrated it through a consultant friend of hers from D.C., Richard Hartwell, who ran some kind of efficiency firm that specialized in helping growing companies optimize leadership. Richard spent 2 weeks interviewing staff, reviewing operations, and preparing a report that concluded Tress Connect needed streamlined leadership and corporate-level experience at the top. The board meeting was called for a Tuesday morning. I wasn't told what it was about until I arrived and saw the agenda item: Leadership Restructure Proposal. 6 board members sat around the table. 4 were Marcus's people, business contacts he'd brought on as the company grew. 2 were original investors from church: Michael Thompson, Deacon Thompson's son, and Sister Patricia Martin, who represented the collective investment of several church families. Gloria sat in the corner, not an official board member but present anyway, as she always was. Simone sat next to Marcus, taking notes on her tablet. She'd never attended a board meeting before. Her presence was a message. Marcus cleared his throat. Wouldn't meet my eyes. "Victoria, thank you for coming. We need to talk about some operational changes." I sat quietly, folded my hands on the table. Let him talk. "The company's grown significantly in the past 12 years, Marcus continued. "We've reached a point where we need to bring in more experienced leadership for operations. Corporate-level experience that can help us scale to the next level." Gloria nodded. Richard Hartwell, the consultant, passed around copies of his report. "As you'll see in the findings," Marcus said, still not looking at me, "the recommendation is to eliminate the COO position and bring in a president of operations with Fortune 500 background. Simone." He was eliminating my position to promote Simone. "Your severance package is generous," Marcus said, sliding papers across the table. 6 months' salary, health insurance continuation through the end of the year, and we're waiving the non-compete clause so you can pursue other opportunities immediately." The room was silent. Michael Thompson and Sister Patricia looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Marcus's allies looked away. Gloria watched me with barely concealed satisfaction. "We appreciate everything you've done to help build this company," Marcus added, like I was an entry-level employee being let go after a failed probation period. I read the severance papers, slowly. Every word. Noted the date they'd prepared these documents. 2 weeks ago, before the consultant's report. This had been planned. I signed them, stood up, smoothed my skirt. "I'll collect my personal items tomorrow," I said. Gloria smiled. First genuine smile I'd seen from her in years. I walked out with my head up. Made it to my car before the tears came. But I wasn't crying from sadness. I was crying from relief, because now I knew exactly who they all were, and they'd just given me the clarity and motivation I needed to make my move. I called David Jameson from the parking lot. "They fired me," I said. "Good," David replied. His voice was calm, almost pleased. "Now we can work without you having to worry about being the bad guy. They made this easy. How long until we can call a special meeting?" 10 days minimum notice required by bylaws, but I'd suggest we wait 3 months. Let them get comfortable. Let Marcus and Simone settle into their new dynamic. Let Gloria celebrate. Then we strike when they think they've won. 3 months, I agreed. Then we end this. The next 3 months were the most productive and strategic of my life. David and I met twice a week, usually at his office early in the morning before normal business hours. We reviewed every document from 12 years of business operations. The trust structure was perfect. My 51% ownership had never been disclosed in day-to-day operations, but it was legally binding, filed with the state, signed by Marcus, unchangeable without my consent, which I'd never given. We reviewed the company bylaws thoroughly, found every provision that worked in my favor. The rule allowing majority shareholders to call special board meetings, the requirement for majority shareholder approval on CEO appointments, the provisions about board composition that Marcus had violated. We discovered financial irregularities that would make excellent leverage. Gloria had been receiving consulting fees for the past 3 years. $5,000 a month, no contract, no board approval, no documentation of services rendered, unauthorized payments totaling $180,000 that would need to be returned. Simone's salary as the new president was $285,000, more than double what my COO's salary had been. Her contract had been signed by Marcus alone, without board approval, which meant it was voidable. We documented everything, built a case file 3 inches thick, prepared for every possible objection, every legal challenge, every attempt to claim my ownership structure wasn't valid. "This is airtight," David said during one of our meetings. "They can't challenge any of this. The only question is how you want to play it. Aggressive or measured?" "Measured," I said. "I don't need to destroy anyone. I just need to claim what's mine." Meanwhile, Gloria threw a celebration dinner at an expensive steakhouse downtown. "Just family," she said, though Simone was invited. I knew because Marcus's sister called me, apologetic. "I told him this wasn't right," she said. "But Mama organized it, and Marcus went along. I'm not going, just so you know." "Thank you, Linda," I said. "I appreciate you telling me." At Tress Connect, the changes happened quickly. Simone officially took the president title. New business cards, new email signature, new office setup. She moved into my old office and redecorated it completely within a week. Marcus announced the new era for Tress Connect in an email to all staff. Talked about fresh perspectives and scaling for growth and bringing in corporate expertise. Several employees quit immediately. Keisha Washington came to my house the night of Marcus's announcement. "This is wrong," she said. She was crying. "Everyone knows you built this company. Everyone knows this is your vision. What are you going to do?" "Wait," I said, "and trust the process." 3 employees sent their resumes to me privately, asking if I'd let them know when I started my next venture. The church community started asking questions. Sister Margaret called asking what was happening. Other members reached out expressing concern. "Baby, what's going on at that company?" Elder Thompson asked me after a Sunday service. "Patience," I told him. "Just a little longer." I spent the 3 months preparing in other ways too. I updated my own resume. Not because I needed another job, but because I needed to remember my own credentials. The platform I'd built, the clients I'd secured, the systems I'd developed, my accomplishments independent of Marcus's narrative. I also spent time thinking about what kind of leader I wanted to be when I took control. Not reactive, not vengeful, just clear about ownership and authority. 2.5 months after my firing, I sent certified letters to all board members. Special meeting called. Required attendance. As majority shareholder, I had that right under the bylaws. Marcus called me within an hour of receiving his letter. "Victoria, what are you doing?" "Exercising my rights as majority shareholder," I said calmly. "What are you talking about? What rights? You'll find out at the meeting. See you Tuesday, Marcus." I hung up before he could respond. Gloria called next. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail demanding I call Marcus and explain myself. I deleted it. Simone tried to reach me through LinkedIn. I blocked her. The message was clear. This was happening on my terms now. The Tuesday board meeting, the one where everything changed. I arrived last on purpose. Let them all sit there wondering what was coming. David Jameson walked in with me, carrying his leather briefcase full of documents. Professional attire, makeup perfect, natural hair styled in a twist-out that Gloria had once suggested I should straighten. Head high. Marcus's confusion. "Victoria, I'm not sure why you're here." We discussed the severance terms. Everything was settled. I set my briefcase on the table, opened it, removed a folder that had waited 12 years to see sunlight. "I called this meeting," I said, "as majority shareholder of Tress Connect. The words hung in the air. Marcus blinked. Simone stopped typing. Gloria's cane tapped once against the floor. "What are you talking about?" Marcus said. David Jameson stepped forward, placed identical folders in front of each board member. Inside, you'll find the original incorporation documents from Tress Connect LLC, David said, filed 12 years ago with the Secretary of State, signed by both Marcus and Victoria Williams. I watched Marcus open his folder, watched his hands shake slightly as he found page 3, watched his face as he saw the ownership structure clearly stated. Victoria Williams, 51%, Marcus Williams, 49%. His signature at the bottom, clear as the day he'd signed it. "This can't be right," he said. But his voice said, he knew it was. "The company attorney can verify," I said, looking at Harold Stevens. Harold nodded slowly. "I've reviewed the documents. They're legitimate, filed with the state, never amended. The ownership structure has been valid since incorporation." Gloria stood up, cane shaking with what I realized was rage, not age. "This is absurd. This is fraud. My son built this company from nothing." "Your son signed these papers," I interrupted. My voice was calm, factual. "At incorporation, he agreed to this ownership structure. The fact that he didn't read what he signed doesn't change its legal validity. I let that settle. Let them all read. Let them process." Marcus kept staring at his signature. He couldn't deny it because there it was, his handwriting, his agreement. After several minutes of silence, I spoke again. "For 12 years I built this company. I created the technology platform that now connects over 5,000 hairstylists with suppliers across 15 states. I secured our first 50 clients through personal relationships I'd built in the beauty community. I managed operations as we grew from 2 people in a borrowed office to 50 employees, generating $8 million in annual revenue. I did this while being called Marcus's helper. I did this while being introduced as Marcus's wife who helps out. I did this while watching someone else take credit for my vision, my work, my relationships." I looked directly at Marcus. I stayed silent because silence gave me clarity. It showed me who people really were when they thought I had no power. Now you all know the truth. I've always had the power. I just chose not to use it until this moment. David Jameson took over, his voice professional and precise. "As majority shareholder, Ms. Williams has certain rights under the bylaws and Delaware corporate law, where Tress Connect is registered. These include the right to call special board meetings, which is why we're here today, the right to vote on major company decisions, and the right to remove executive officers, including the CEO." Gloria tried to interrupt. David held up his hand. "Mrs. Williams, you're not a board member. You have no official standing in this meeting. Please remain quiet, or I'll have to ask you to leave." Gloria sat down heavily. The room had never seen anyone speak to her that way. David continued. "We've also identified several financial and governance irregularities that need to be addressed. Unauthorized consultant fees paid to Gloria Williams totaling $180,000. An executive contract for Ms. Johnson that was signed without proper board approval. Board composition that violates the company's own bylaws regarding majority shareholder rights." Michael Thompson, Deacon Thompson's son, cleared his throat. He'd been silent through the whole meeting. "I want to say something." He looked around the table. "My father and the other church elders who invested in Tress Connect 12 years ago. We all knew about Sister Victoria's majority ownership. We read the incorporation documents before we signed our investment checks. We invested because of her vision, her integrity, and her commitment to serving our community. We watched for 12 years as that truth was buried under ego and enablement. Sister Victoria, we're glad you're finally stepping forward. This is overdue." Sister Patricia Martin nodded firmly. "We've been praying she'd take her rightful place. The church community knows who built this company. We've known all along. It's time everyone else knew too." Marcus looked at them in genuine shock. "You knew?" This whole time you knew! Son, Michael said gently. We're church people. We read documents before we sign. Your wife set up a smart structure to protect what she was building. That's not deception. That's wisdom. I watched Marcus process this information. That the people he thought were his supporters had actually been waiting for me to claim what was mine, had been witnesses to the truth all along. The vote happened efficiently. Motion to remove Marcus Williams as CEO and appoint Victoria Williams as CEO, David said. Second, Michael Thompson said immediately. All in favor? 5 hands went up. Michael, Patricia, and 3 others who'd been silent until now but clearly understood which way the power was shifting. Opposed? Marcus raised his hand. That was all. Motion carries, David said. Victoria Williams is now CEO of Tress Connect. More votes followed quickly. Simone's contract was voided due to improper approval process. She would be given 2 weeks severance and escorted out today. Gloria was permanently banned from company premises and all company events. An audit would begin immediately to recover unauthorized consultant fees. Marcus was offered a position as strategic advisor. He would retain his 49% ownership. I wasn't taking what was legally his, but he would have no operational authority, no decision-making power, just an advisory role. The meeting adjourned. Gloria tried to wait for Marcus, but security was already there. David had coordinated everything. Mrs. Williams, I need you to come with me, the security officer said. I'm waiting for my son. Your son will meet you outside. You're no longer authorized to be in this building. Gloria left cursing, her cane tapping angry rhythm against the marble floor. I heard her voice echoing down the hallway. Something about betrayal and ungrateful daughters-in-law, and how dare I humiliate her son. The irony was lost on her completely. When most people had filed out, Marcus stayed seated, staring at the table. Simone tried to approach him, but David intercepted her. Ms. Johnson, security will escort you to collect your personal items. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. She left without another word. When it was just Marcus, David, and me in the room, Marcus finally spoke. Victoria. His voice was hollowed out. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the ownership structure. You didn't know, because you didn't read what you signed, I said. You were too excited about being CEO, about telling people you were a founder, about building your reputation. The details didn't matter to you, but details always matter, Marcus. I never meant for it to go this far. Mama, she just kept pushing, and Simone was supposed to help us scale, and... You meant every bit of it, I said quietly. Maybe not consciously. But you meant it every time you didn't correct a journalist who called you the sole founder. You meant it every time you let your mother humiliate me at company events. You meant it every time you asked me to be the bigger person while you got the credit. Every silent moment was a choice. You chose wrong. Marcus had no response. You can stay on as advisor if you want, I continued. Keep your 49%. I'm not taking what's legally yours, but you don't make decisions anymore. You don't speak for this company, and your mother never sets foot in this building again. My company, Marcus said quietly. My company, I corrected. It always was. You just forgot to read the paperwork. I stood up, gathered my materials, walked toward the door. Victoria, Marcus called out. I turned back. I'm sorry. For all of it, for not seeing you, for not protecting you from my mother, for everything. I looked at him for a long moment, saw genuine regret there. Too late, but genuine. I believe you are, I said. But sorry doesn't change the past, it just maybe makes the future less bitter. I walked out. David followed. In the elevator, he finally smiled. Your father would have loved that, he said. Thomas always said you'd know when to make your move. "He taught me well," I replied. The weeks that followed were busy but satisfying. I moved into the CEO office, hung photos of my parents on the wall, kept the furniture simple but comfortable, made it my space, promoted Keisha Washington to Chief Operating Officer. She cried when I told her. "You've been doing the work anyway," I said. "Now you'll have the title and the salary to match." Promoted Jennifer Chen, who'd been Marcus's executive assistant for years, to VP of Strategic Partnerships. She'd watched everything unfold, had seen the injustice, had brought me coffee in the early days when no one else acknowledged I existed. "Why me?" Jennifer asked. "Because you see things clearly," I said, "and you never participated in the lies. That's worth something." Within a month, we'd restructured the entire leadership team. 3 black women, 2 black men, 1 Latina woman, all promoted from within. People who'd earned their positions through work, not connections. Key clients started calling. Word had spread about the leadership change. "We're glad you're officially in charge now," Janice Robertson told me. She owned 15 salons and had been one of our first major clients. "We always knew you were the one running things. Good to see it made official." 4 other major clients said similar things. They'd been considering leaving but stayed because of me specifically. Staff morale shifted dramatically. Employees spoke up in meetings, pitched ideas. The energy changed from cautious to creative almost overnight. I found a card on my desk one afternoon. No name. "Thank you for showing us what it looks like when a black woman takes her power back. We're watching. We're learning." I kept that card in my desk drawer with my most important documents. Marcus showed up to the office occasionally. Kept to his small office on the 2nd floor. Employees weren't quite sure how to act around him. The charismatic CEO was now just an advisor with no real authority. We passed in the hallway once. He nodded. I nodded back. That was the extent of our communication. The divorce was handled quietly. Our lawyers negotiated terms in conference rooms. No drama. No fighting over assets. The company ownership was clear in the trust documents. The house was in both names, so we sold it and split the proceeds. Done. Marcus moved in with Gloria, back in D.C. The son who'd let his mother destroy his marriage now lived with her in the aftermath. I heard through mutual friends that he'd started therapy, that he was finally beginning to understand how much damage his mother had done, how much I'd carried, how badly he'd failed as a partner. Too late for us, but maybe not too late for him to grow. Gloria never recovered, socially. The church community knew what had happened. Word spread through the network of Black Baptist churches across the city. She tried to attend a service once, but the whispers followed her. Nothing cruel, just truth. That's Marcus's mother, the one who tried to steal credit from the woman who actually built Tress Connect. She moved back to D.C. permanently. I heard she was bitter until the end, insisting Marcus had been cheated, that I'd somehow tricked him. She never acknowledged the signature on the incorporation documents, never admitted the truth. That was fine. The truth existed whether she acknowledged it or not. Simone disappeared from the industry entirely. She tried reaching out to contacts for executive positions. But word travels fast in our circles. People knew she'd benefited from someone else's erasure. Knew she'd been complicit in my firing. No serious job offers came. Last I heard, she'd left corporate America entirely, working as a consultant for small businesses somewhere in Colorado. The church community rallied around me in ways that still make me emotional. Elder Thompson released a formal statement that he read during Sunday service. "This church supports Sister Victoria Williams in her righteous claim to what God gave her the wisdom to build. We celebrate her patience, her dignity, and her strength. We were blessed to witness the truth prevail over deception." Deacon Washington stood during testimony time. We knew Sister Victoria was the backbone of that company from day one. We were waiting for her to claim what was hers. Proud doesn't begin to cover what we feel. Sister Margaret, who'd been there from the beginning, pulled me aside after service. "Your daddy is smiling in heaven, baby girl. You waited until you had all the pieces. Then you moved with precision. That's exactly what Thomas taught you." She was the fifth person to tell me that. I finally believed it. My parents came to visit a month after I took over as CEO. Mama Ruth walked through the new office space, touching the furniture, looking at the photos I'd hung of us as a family. "This is you, baby," she said. "Finally, just you." Daddy stood at the window of my CEO office, looking at the city spread below. I joined him. "You did good," he said quietly. "Exactly what I taught you. Silence until you have all the power. Then speak with authority." "It took 12 years, I said. 12 years isn't too long to wait for justice," Daddy replied. "Some people wait their whole lives and never get it. You got yours, and you did it with dignity. That meant more than the corner office, more than the CEO title, more than any of it." 6 months after the board meeting, I sat in my office on a quiet Friday evening. Most employees had gone home. The building was peaceful. The company was thriving. Revenue up 40% from the previous year. 2 new product lines launched. Partnership with 3 major retailers. Our stylists could now find supplies in stores, not just online. We'd hired 12 new employees. The mission I'd started with, serving our community, making it easier for Black-owned beauty businesses to thrive, was back on track. Stronger than ever, I'd also created a mentorship program, brought in young Black women from Howard, Spelman, and other HBCUs, taught them about entrepreneurship, about protecting their ideas, about reading documents before signing, about the importance of legal structures that reflect actual ownership. "What's the most important thing you've learned?" one of the mentees asked me during a workshop. I thought about that question carefully. "That silence isn't weakness when it's strategic," I said. "That patience isn't passivity when you're building power. That sometimes the most radical thing a Black woman can do is wait until she holds all the cards, then play them with precision.